Good afternoon, Mr. Manqoba Zungu.
Afternoon, Andisa.
Thank you very much for joining us on our platform. We're looking forward to have some time with you to just understand who you are as a business leader. What are some of your key takeaways, perhaps from the conference, from just conversations that have been had? I would love to know, like, what do you do? What fills up your 9 to 5?
What's 9 to 5?
I like this already. What fills up your days? What really gives you fuel? What philosophies do you subscribe to as a business leader, as just as a man? And so maybe let's start with the easy stuff. So let me ease you into this. Tell us, so who are you? What companies are you affiliated with, and what exactly do you do at those companies?
Thank you for having me. I'm a lover of human beings, and I think because I'm a lover of human beings and I'm passionate about extracting value out of individuals and assisting individuals to reach their full potential. I'm a person who grew up in a Christian family, and I believe that we all have God-given talents, and ours is to firstly know those talents, nurture those talents, and grow those talents. So in the various spaces that I'm involved in, I always try to live towards that. And one of my biggest kind of mantras is lifting as we rise. So with the little that we've gotten, that we've blessed with, we have an ability, or we have a responsibility to lift others up as we rise. And I think, as a Zulu person, the whole saying, or African person, it's not even just a Zulu thing, umuntu ngabantu, and I think it's quite important for us to always remember those teachings, because I think it's teachings that make us unique as Africans, and at times we forget those teachings, and we lose kind of where we are grounded. So to answer your question directly, I'm involved in quite a few things. My main job that pays the bills, so I have to say this one first. I'm an executive at a company called Solu Growth. So we used to be part of Deloitte Africa. We were one of the divisions within Deloitte Africa. And then in 2018, we did a management buyout and we bought out the business from Deloitte. We now have over 400 employees with offices in South Africa, in Cairo in Egypt, in the US, in Australia, and in the UK, in London, in the UK. Effectively, it's a management consulting business. We do some outsourcing work. Clients outsource their services or the processes to us, and we assist those clients to digitalize them, automate them, re-engineer them, do strategy. Effectively, our slogan is your growth partner. So we assist clients to grow. So whether it's growing your top line or growing your bottom line, we do that. So that's the day job. There I look after what we refer to as client acquisition. So sales, marketing, business development, and the commercial office. And then my passion project is the reason why I'm here. I run a mentorship program called Get Ready Skills, where we get unemployed graduates ready for employment. So we run them through a mini MBA type of experience for 6 months, and then we place them into employment. Through that, we've placed over 288 of these graduates into real full-time jobs in corporate South Africa. And we've raised over 50 million rand that we've used to pay salaries. And how kind of the salary structure works, sometimes you find there's a company that's got work for the graduate to do to get real work experience, but they don't have the money to pay the graduates. There's another company, a private equity company, fintech, or much smaller company that says, look, I don't really have much work for this graduate to do, but we've got the funds, so we can give you the funds. And then the graduate works in company A, but company B pays for the graduate. So those are kind of the models that we try to use to be innovative and to create, the jobs for the graduates. So that's the one, the other passion project. The other one, I'm part of TEDx Durban. So I'm on the commercial side there, again, linked to taking information to people, sharing of ideas, brainstorming innovative ideas that are ultimately going to assist the country to grow. And then last but not least, I'm involved with Amazulu Business College, where we are the first club in the Premier Soccer League to create an environment that teaches footballers skills off the field. There's always this narrative that footballers are reckless and they're always going to die broke and all of that. So we're trying to change that narrative in our own little way. So those are essentially some of the things. Oh, and I'm a full-time husband as well. Probably the most important one is I'm a full-time husband.
You're operating from a 27-hour day while us mere mortals have 24 hours. When do you do all of these things?
So thank you for that question, and because I get that question quite a lot, and I think it's quite a fundamental question. For me, and it also starts linking to one of the things you mentioned in your opening statements around what are some of the key takeouts that I've taken out of this conference. For me, I've really enjoyed the fact that this conference is focusing a lot more on skills versus the traditional qualifications, experience, and so on and so forth. And I think for me, that's a game changer for us as a country. If more of us understand the skill sets that are required to do whatever things that we need to do, you actually find that you operate in a much more efficient space.
Right.
So to give an example about myself, the skill set that I use every day is building relationships, communicating, understanding a problem and coming up with a solution for it. So whether I'm doing that at Get Ready or at Amazulu or at Solid Growth or at Gibbs where I lecture MBA students part-time, I'm using the same skill set. So there's no that's why I teased you about 9 to 5.
Yeah.
There's no that 9 to 5 I do this, then from here I do this, because I could have meetings with a client and talk about all of these things. We could be talking from a consulting perspective. Then I ask them, how does your graduate program work? Then there's an opportunity for Get Ready. How does your CSI program work? Then I get sponsorship for Amazulu. So for me, I found kind of the golden thread that I apply every day of my life, and I kind of wear all the hats all at once.
Yeah. I almost want to dive right into the deep end. I almost can't help myself. You've given me such good nuggets. So the conversations now, we're getting full steam ahead. You and I attended the BPESA conference in Cape Town, and I think that BPO sector, and perhaps for the benefit of our listeners, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the BPO sector and what is your understanding, why Solid Growth was in that space?
Sure.
And then we can get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Thank you. When President Ramaphosa always speaks and he makes his State of the Nation's address, he refers to it as a GBS industry, so Global Business Services.
Correct.
So that's more of the kind of global term. But interchangeably they call it BPO, and BPO stands for Business Process Outsourcing.
100%.
So effectively what that industry and that environment is geared to do. It's geared to create jobs in the country. So as a simple example, part of the BPO space is what we refer to as call centers. So call centers are within the BPO space, and how call centers generally work. Yes, there will be some clients or companies that have their own internal call centers. Most of the companies outsource that. And they say, look, this is not our core business. We want to focus on making cars or selling insurance, selling medical aid, or selling personal loans. And the call center is then responsible for kind of getting the money from the clients and following up and making additional sales and so on. So they outsource that function to an external provider.
Yeah.
So our company is that external provider. So companies will outsource their call center functions to us. They'll outsource their IT to us. They'll outsource their finance to us. So we do all of their finances, do all the transactions, recording, and so on, because they just want to focus on what is core to them. So effectively, that's what the BPO industry is about. And as I said, BPO, GBS used interchangeably.
Right. And South Africa seems to have been earmarked, I think, by the international market as almost, the next hub. Purely, I guess, from the accessibility of, some of these skills. Yeah. We obviously, I think, from a national and a government perspective, we've got a massive crisis that we have to solve around how do we unbundle the high unemployment rate. So it does tend to feel like a bit of a natural fit. And I suppose if I could maybe just, kind of go off rails, very quickly, it's almost how Mauritius as a country has kind of, made that turn where now they've got the most accountants per capita. And I almost see South Africa kind of moving in that space, as it relates to this particular, I think, segment. Now, I want to talk about how do we maybe just think and maybe repurpose some of the skills. I mean, you work in the youth space. We've got this massive unemployment rate. A lot of our youth are actually living below the poverty line. My apologies. And there's now, I think, these opportunities. How can we better access, or rather, I think, to the young people who are listening to us speak about this, who perhaps may be in despair, they haven't been able to locate a job for quite some while. If they have, the retention rate has been significantly low, so they're in and out of different jobs, right? Every 6 months, a contract lapses. How can we, better unbundle this as, I think, an opportunity from an economic growth perspective as a country, given that, the talent is here, and if the international market is anything to go by, it supports that narrative.
If I had the answer, I'd probably be the Minister of Education or something, right? Because, that's effectively the question.
That's the $1 million question, right?
That's the $1 million question. So I will share some of the views that I have on this, and in no way, are they exhaustive views. So firstly, going back to South Africa and Africa, the point that you made, there's something that we refer to as the youth dividend. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that we don't appreciate as South Africa and as the African continent. Youth dividend effectively means we've got the largest population of youth, qualified youth. Our continent, African continent's got the largest population of qualified youth that can go into the kind of the working world, right? And why that becomes a dividend, or why that becomes a good thing, is that then naturally they can work for a lot longer, they can add more economic value to the countries that they're from.
Right. Compared
to other continents that have got older populations. And when they then obviously get kids, they have to start from scratch, and we should be, elevating and going to the next level. However, that youth dividend is useless if the youth are unemployed, to your point. Then it defeats the whole purpose. So how do we get these youth employed, or rather, how do we get these youth economically active? Because it's not only about them being employed. Some of the discussions I've been involved in. So one of the things I've said is that can we consider micro qualifications? So currently, primary school, high school, you matriculate, you go to study at a tertiary institution for 3 to 4 years, then after that you need to find a job. That's kind of how the trajectory is.
Yeah.
Some of the discussions we're having is to say, but how's about the finish matric, you identify whatever skill sets that you want to nurture, you do that course for 6 months or a year, you get the qualification that you've got that experience, theoretic experience, and then you go to work, or you go to start a business, or you enroll for a 3-year contract, 3-year graduate program, 3-year program, degree, and you drop out after year 1. Yeah. Currently, as it stands, that year is wasted.
Correct.
No employer is going to say, oh, okay, you've got first year, okay, cool. But why is that? Because you've passed that first year, so you are competent in those subjects. Why can't you get that certification to say, okay, at least you are qualified in these things? It may not be the full degree.
Sure.
But if you just want to work in those disciplines and you've gotten that qualification, why can't that be used for you to get a job, or for you to go to a bank or DFI, a development finance institution, to raise funding for it? So I think for us, it's about being creative about how can we unlock value and change. It's not even changing the system. It's just leveraging. The system is already there. These things are already there. It's just about applying it differently, and seeing value from it differently. I always make an example. You can get someone who studied tech or IT or whatever, right, and gets a degree for it. And then you get a kid from Nkandla, Mhlabalingano, Alex Soshanguve, who can take a laptop, strip it, fix it, put it back together, or a cell phone, put it back together, repair this thing. But from a getting job perspective or from a getting a funding perspective, this Alex kid is not going to be able to get a job or get funding because they don't have the right qualifications.
Meanwhile, they actually have the skill and the experience.
The skill and the experience to do, So I think we need those changes as a society, and we spoke about learning, unlearning, and relearning in the previous session. And I think it's for us to, for us to have got the privilege of having podcasts like this and emceeing, big conferences like this to drive that narrative and try to change that behavior, because there's a lot that we've got for us, but if we all try to do the same thing, we're not going to get the different results. Sanity.
Yeah. And it's been interesting, I think, to kind of observe, I think, the unintended consequence of the unemployment rate is you now have, amongst many other things, you now have a segment of young people who are incredibly stressed, who are incredibly suicidal. And of course, we continue now to see these conversations take shape. They permeate into our workspaces, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. And I, this morning there were conversations from the wellness track around, how do we reframe what wellness is in the workplace, right, and across the spectrum. So whether it is mental, emotional, financial. You spoke in a track with the youth just around what are some of the needs of the youth. And I guess maybe this question is geared, hopefully the answer would be geared towards speaking to the segment of the employers who shoulder the responsibility to hire young people. And these are young people who are no longer looking for traditional benefits as you and I know them, right? I think when we started working, now I'm going to give away my age. It was a long time ago. You had your traditional CTC, and, it was the traditional medical aid and, Provident Fund if you were lucky enough, or if you're earning enough to have one, et cetera, et cetera. And you're now having, these kids who are saying, that's not how we live our lives.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want I think the difficulty in having a car, right? Because then I must pay for insurance. Then I must park this thing safely. I want to Uber, right? So it's instant grad, right? I want to jump on an Uber and get from point A to point B. I want Netflix. I want to switch it on. It's on an app. It's easy peasy. It's plug and play. And so all of a sudden now this new generation of employees, their compensation, or at least how they want it to be packaged, looks fundamentally different. Yeah. And I guess what are some of the conversations? I mean, there's a lot of tools that are out there. And people curate all sorts of things to speak to some of these needs. And yet there continues to be a bit of a pushback, I think, from the older leaders who are conditioned and socialized to look at compensation or to look at the workplace construct through a very linear lens. What do we say to them?
So thanks for that question. So I became director in 2018 at work. And I then get given this beautiful corner office in Sandton. And I said to my CEO, I don't need an office. He's like, but what do you mean? I'm like, I look after marketing, business development, sales. I have to be out there selling, right? And selling our services and our brand. You should be worried if I'm here in the office the whole day. He just could not understand it. Because to your point, for him, success is then about this corner office.
And the PA that sits outside.
And the 360 glass windows and so on. So he just fundamentally couldn't understand that. The other thing is that when I got to Exco, my belief was that the youngsters need to see someone that they can relate to. They need to see themselves in me. So I then started wearing suits and sneakers, which was another thing that they just didn't understand. Of course, now a lot of people do it, but I'm talking now 5 years ago. And they're like, but dude, our clients are gonna...
It's unprofessional.
It's unprofessional. What are our clients gonna say, And needless to say, clients come and like, oh, you're looking cool, And clients were warm to it. And so when my colleagues saw that the clients were warm to it, they then also kind of became more comfortable around it. So I think for me, what we need to do as leaders as well is we always speak about customer centricity. So we go all out to understand what our customers want, and we want to serve our customers. How much time do we spend with our talent, you know, with our internal resources to understand what is it that makes them tick, you know? And because with our customers, we say, no, do what the customer wants. You may think that the answer is A, but if the customer wants, you may think it's good to start from A to Z.
Yeah.
If the customer wants to start from Z to A, then do that. And we're very comfortable and we're flexible around that. But why are we not flexible and comfortable around our staff and understanding what they want, understanding what their EVP, employee value proposition is? One of my, the ladies I work with says to me, I think it was last year, says to me, Manqoba, I am turning 30. I don't have a dog, I don't have a cat, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have any responsibilities. My lease is coming to an end. And she stayed in Joburg at the time. Can I relocate to Hermanus? I want to work from Hermanus.
Lovely.
I'm like, oh, that's fine, not a problem. She's like, really? I'm like, so long as you are, because we work most of the time remotely.
Sure.
So long as I can get a hold of you and you attend all the meetings and you're switched on every time in the meeting, you have to contribute, no issues. So she does that. And then she stays in, say, Hermanus for 6 months, and then, you know, these youngsters, let me push the boundaries again. Well, I've actually just come back from Dubai and I quite liked it there. So can I relocate to Dubai? I said, that's fine. Right? So you know the story. So long as, and you know, if we as leaders are more open to that, I find that our retention levels are going to be a lot. I didn't pay any cent different, any more. I didn't pay any more than I was paying her. The fact that she's going to Dubai, that's her problem. She would have calculated how she's going to fund that. But it creates so much more loyalty because she now feels that this business sees me for me, and this business recognizes my value, and this business is output driven, not about inputs. Gone are the days where in performance review meetings we say, no, but Andisa deserves an exceptional performance rating because she's the first one here and she's the last one out.
Switches the lights on and off.
Switches the lights. She knows everything. That means nothing now because those are all inputs, you know. So I think as leaders, we need to spend more time with our talents, get to understand what makes them tick. And you actually may find it will cost us less.
Yeah, in the long run,
in
for
the
sure.
long run.
That resonates with me so much because the founder of our business actually subscribes to that philosophy. So we are all also at Float Pays completely officeless. So we don't have real estate. He's very big on playing to our strengths. Understanding, you know, like what are the things that, you know, light your Christmas lights on, as I like to say it, and really leans into that. And there's so much to be said about that because now that we've found that sweet zone, it just, you know, like we just are willing to give so much more than what's actually expected.
100%.
And it really changes and shifts the dynamic in terms of what the business then is able to get out of us, you know, as participants of this organization. So there's so much to be said about that. And I don't think we talk about it enough. But I think to your point earlier, it is a lot about that unlearning and relearning. And there really needs to be a mindset reset. Almost, particularly with our older leaders. Amazing. Now, I want to talk, Manqoba, just around economic growth, and maybe, you know, this is the more complicated part of this. We've spent the better part of yesterday afternoon hearing from speakers who spoke about alternative disruptions. We had Dr. Ritabile, and her talk was centered around the just energy transition. And in part of her address, she alluded to the 70 million jobs that could be lost as part of that process. There's a thing you said on stage earlier around the difference between promotion and progression. And I really kind of want to sink my teeth into that. Because there does seem to be this narrative of youngsters are demanding, they're entitled, you know, and all of these terms that are very change resistant for the most part. If you peel back the layers of some of those conversations, you'll quickly learn they're not so entitled. But of course, you know, we're resisting the change as leaders. Talk to our audience around the difference between progression and promotion. and just frame it in a way that, against maybe the backdrop of the conversation earlier around, the people that are on the receiving end and the people who are kind of driving this change?
Lovely questions. I'm an accountant by profession. I probably should have started with that. But I
couldn't have guessed.
But I intentionally never mention it, right? Because we've got this thing of boxing people.
Yes.
Once you say you're an accountant, you expect it to be a particular way. So it's always a surprise to people when I tell them I'm an accountant. So for me, I've progressed. Sure, at times I've been promoted at work, but I've progressed because I've ended up having to do, I think in the last 5 years, I've done probably 3 or 4 different roles within the same organization. And some of the roles were lateral moves, so meaning I haven't been promoted. I've just been given more responsibility.
More opportunities.
Or more opportunities even, right? I've got a very short attention span. So for me, I need to work in an organization that gives opportunities all the time.
Yeah.
Right? An organization that's not strict about, this is your job description, you need to stick to your job description. So I'm finding that a lot of the youngsters want that. Want the ability. Sure, I may be a financial accountant, but I want to have the opportunity to also work with the CSI team because I'm passionate about purpose and impact projects. I want to have the opportunity of creating the soccer team starting the soccer team for the company or netball team or whatever. Because I'm so big on teamwork and
or sport as an outlet.
Or sports as an outlet, right? Because you spoke earlier on about suicidal rates and so on. So it's because one of the reasons that people don't have an outlet, to be able to engage and so on. So, what we've seen is companies that get voted as best company to work for, or companies that got a high retention rate, are companies that are very, very in touch with those realities. The mistake we make is that we want to, we don't speak to the graduates or to the younger staff about what is it that they want. We think we know what they want, so we may then give them different options, and then when they leave, then we, to your point, then are resistant to no, but we gave them all these options. Why are they still leaving?
Yeah.
But maybe that's not what they want. Did you ask them? Who would say, if I allow you to leave early on Fridays, is that what you want? Maybe they get stuck in traffic on Fridays because going back home, everyone's going back home. So they'd actually prefer to come in late on Monday.
Yeah.
So sometimes we think we're doing the right thing and we're solving for the right things, but it's actually the wrong solution. So for me, it's really all about just keeping your finger on the pulse, engaging with your teams, whether it's weekly or whatever, but just know what's going on in their heads. Know how to read their body language to say, there's something wrong with Andy today.
Yeah.
I may not know what it is, but this is not normally how she is, and you need to find ways for yourself to be able to figure that out. If you're working remotely, how do you do that? Do you insist on having video calls? Your meetings must be on video, or it's one video a week or whatever. You can figure it out for yourself, but just so long as you are able to keep your finger on the pulse. And because once the employees have decided that they want to leave, it's too late.
Right.
So you need to be proactive about the retention and not try to retain them
At
only
the
when
end.
they want to leave.
Got it. And maybe just one last question, Manqoba, before we close off our segment. A lot of the conversations, certainly we're hearing from conferences around the solutioning of the people agenda is sometimes seen in the more traditional spaces as too progressive. Right, we've gone from wanting to shift the needle to wanting to make a complete leap, and perhaps that's part of the resistance where it's coming from. It's not a staggered change management approach, and whilst I've got an appreciation for that, I'm also conscious that we are servicing a very large segment of the employee workforce that is young, that have very different life experiences. The way they're experiencing life for the first time in their milestones is fundamentally different to when we did, all those years ago. So when we think about the people space particularly and incapacitating the workforce, and I think alongside with HR people, with a lot of the newer technologies, or rather the newer ways of looking either at money, either at wellness, either at the work construct, like what does a work day consist of? Is it really the 9 to 5? And I mean, you and I both know, like, that's a myth, right? No one's fully productive every day, 9 to 5, 5 days a week. That's very rare. What conversations, and perhaps how can we articulate the value of outlier thinking or alternative thinking to this new work construct that we're kind of building right now?
So you speak about wellness. So my wife started a business. It's a NGO. It's called 1K Foundation. So effectively, she donated her kidney to her brother a few years ago, and now she's started this foundation to educate more around, to demystify a lot of the myths. So she's healthy. Her brother is qualifying as a CA.
Amazing.
He's relocating to London in January, and she's wanting to demystify the myths around that.
And the fears, I'm sure.
And the fears, of course, valid fears at that. So how she's then assisting companies in the wellness space to say that can be part of your wellness program, because ultimately, if you are ill and you've got kidney issues, you're probably not pitching up 100%, at your best at work.
Yeah.
It's going to impact your performance. It may impact your team members and so on and so forth, right? But it's not how we've always looked at it in the workspace. So, there are then individuals and companies and organizations that are out there to try and assist us in changing the ways in which we look at things like wellness or mental health, which we call mental wealth. Because again, if you're not healthy upstairs, you're probably not going to be able to be economically active, or at least not at the level that you can get to, right?
Certainly.
So it impacts your wealth creation opportunities as well. So I think, it's just about us again going back. I know I sound like a stuck record. Just being able to unlearn some of the things. Just chill, guys. Let's just chill, Bafetu. Relax. Just umlalelo Andisa. Yeah, sharp. She may be saying something that you're not used to,
right,
or that you think this thing seems too good to be true. But just chill and just listen.
Yeah.
Don't already, they speak about the reptilian brain.
Yeah.
Don't, bring that reptilian brain and you're already being defensive and you're already coming up with ideas on why this thing can't work.
Yeah.
Just chillax. Just take a step back and just hear out. Even out of the 10 things, you may not agree with 5, but maybe there's 5 that you do agree with. And let's explore that. Let's start there. Let's find commonalities. Let's seek to always find commonalities first, versus the other way around.
Right.
Trying to find how I'm gonna, challenge her, how I'm gonna show her that this thing's not gonna work, right? So for me, there are many people that have got great ideas, and again, going back to the Bible, I don't believe that God will give us any challenges that we don't have solutions for. The question is, are we really open to finding those solutions? Or when God presents us with those solutions, but those solutions come in a form and a manner that we're not used to, are we open and trusting enough to take those solutions and see where they pan out?
This is it.
Or we just want to just keep doing things the way that we've been doing it, the way that we're more comfortable in.
This is it. Manqoba, thank you so much for your time and for spending some time with us.
Sure, it goes by quickly.
Sure. We're having fun, that's why.
Yeah.
But I've got such an appreciation for the work that you do in the youth space. I really think the economy needs lots more of us who are intentional about plowing back, who are intentional about changing the narrative, but we're practical, right? We're not just having superficial conversations or conversations or initiatives from an optics perspective that, we can kind of really measure true impact. Because that's what it is. When we talk about ESG, that S of, which is just the social impact, or what is the impact of our actions from the things that we do, and how is that changing the dial? So thank you. I wish you well in all your endeavors. I hope it multiplies and we come back maybe the next time and you've done, 10 more things.
I receive.
But thank you very much, good sir.
I enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.